Hello, everybody, for our next episode. I'm very excited to introduce you in just a minute to a very interesting lady who's doing God's work, if I can use that word, grand overall designer. So, the Define Yourself show, we're about interviewing people who have a story to share that relates to transformation, whether it's in business, career, personal, or all three. Because we are human, we bring our whole selves to work. I really enjoy speaking with people who have experienced transformation or helping others experience transformation. And this is so that I can learn about the journey and become inspired, and I hope that you will be too. And also to remember that defining yourself, or our title of the show, is really about defining what we value and building our character to add values to other and to go beyond. And I'm thrilled to introduce you to Madhavi, Parikh, who is doing that exact thing. I'll give you a little bit of background on her. She is a physician assistant with over 20 years of experience caring for individuals on their cancer journey. Her approach to cancer coaching focuses on aligning the body's four quadrants: spiritual, physical, intellectual, and emotional, which, when in harmony, can allow for a greater sense of well-being and connection with the world around them. She is keenly aware that cancer is not just a physical disease, it also affects the mind and the spirit. Her approach to clinical coaching incorporates her training in integrative oncology, contemplative medicine, practices of mindfulness and self-compassion, nutrition, and fasting. Through her unique I Spy health model, which speaks directly to the individual, she meets patients and their caregivers wherever they are on their journey. With kind attention and expertise, Madhavi empowers individuals to gain control of their health by providing education, encouragement, and support. And so, welcome, Madhavi. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you, Ellen, for having me. It's something I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it, and it's an honor as well. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, just a little bit before we dive into your story, I sure could have used someone like you when I had cancer 3 times. And so I didn't even know like a cancer, coach with your kind of clinical background would even exist. So I'm really excited about diving in and hearing about how you're helping others.
Yes.
Why don't you share a little bit about your personal journey and what inspired you to do what you're doing?
So, um, my personal journey has been, I think, an amalgamation of my life journey. There were three things that I knew when I was growing up, and that was that I was coming to America, I would practice medicine, and I would meditate. And coming to America has allowed me to practice meditation and medicine and put the two together. My journey in medicine has one been guided by my own healing that I needed to do from my life's experiences growing up, and then also being influenced by the many patients that I have come across in as a PA, working with cancer patients, and seeing how is it that they live their life, whatever the outcome, but how is it that they live their life, and what is it that gets them to where they want to be. So that has been my guiding light in my journey to becoming a clinical coach.
That's amazing. So how long have you been in the United States now?
So coming up at 36 years. So
Wow.
longer here than I've been back home, but I grew up there, so that's still home as well.
Of course, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what sets your approach to cancer coaching apart from the traditional oncology care. Maybe you can expand on that.
So for a good number of years, I worked in the conventional medical oncology space, and during that time, I was observing that there were some patients who were going through their treatment just fine, but there were others where they were having a very difficult time. And it could be a difficult time physically with side effects. It could be emotionally coming to terms with their diagnosis, or it could be their family members who were having a hard time with their loved one's diagnosis of cancer. So observing that and then seeing how it impacted the overall outcome. So even though there may be some cancers that may not respond well to treatment, because back then, for example, pancreatic cancer was it, and it still remains, but we now have better treatment options. But at that time, 20 years ago, it was more or less a death sentence, especially if it was caught beyond stage 2. And but how did there were still some people who went through their treatment with very few side effects, for example, or fewer side effects compared to other people, or they were more at peace on their journey. And that is what I was observing as I went along. And then I was also mentored by people around me who were looking at the whole person while they were treating them. So observe, and how did that influence the general outcome as well, was also another part of it. So when I had the opportunity to participate in an integrative oncology program, I was able to see again the evidence-based evidence that was around certain modalities, like why certain vitamins and supplements are given, why is yoga not providing the results that they were expecting it to provide. And I saw that it's a combination of the individual, where they are coming from, how open are they to receiving or accepting their diagnosis, receiving the treatments. What is the support that comes from their loved ones? How resilient, what role does emotional and mental and social resilience play into all of this? And when we have those kind of discussions, that is when the person becomes alive, because that is who we are, whether we have a cancer or any other disease. So as I went along, I came across Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's model of the 4-quadrant model of the body, which is basically the spiritual, physical, intellectual, and emotional. And in one of her lectures, she says that it's usually when we are deficient in at least one of those quadrants, that is when we are not allowing ourselves to heal. And so, how do we put those 4 quadrants together depending on wherever we are in our life's journey, whether we are sick, whether we're grieving somebody's loss, whether we're grieving our own loss? How do we approach all of that? And that's what led me to kind of come up with this model of what I call integrative SPI health, with SPI being the acronym for that: spiritual, physical, intellectual, and emotional. And how do we integrate it in a way that speaks to the person?
Wow. Well, you touched on a few points there. I don't know if I mentioned, but my first husband died of pancreatic cancer in his mid 40s. And so, yeah, that was a death sentence. He was very healthy, except for the fact that he had cancer and at least 4 organs. He rallied, was in remission for a year, and then the chemo, it starts to be harder to find the right chemo that will work. And then my own, cancer story, it's interesting about that 4-quadrant area. I can see how that would be something that you would want to think of, like that's, at least from my experience, and my husband's, those doctors, as nice as they weren't really looking at the whole person, that whole SPI kind of, method. Although I did have a really interesting conversation with my oncologist, because I went back to him 3 times, or maybe it was 2 times. When I got the 3rd recurrence, we just, went to surgery. And I said, why are you in oncology? Wouldn't that be really, sad? And he goes, it's an interesting thing. I develop a deeper relationship with my patients because I'm seeing them all the time, and I'm seeing them in a very, very tough period of their time. So he felt like it was a very spiritual calling for him to be there to support his, clients during that time. So I don't know if you have, it seems like maybe that's somewhat similar. I don't know if you want to expand on that or.
Sure. And oncology first, the thing with oncology that struck me the most was that I was lacking the deeper relationship with myself. and to come and I had to come into that. I had to understand it so that I could then allow myself to heal. And with that healing, then I think whatever is inside us also is something that we kind of project towards others. So that is what allowed me to connect with my patients first, is that I had the need to heal myself, and it is through them that I was seeing that. So and that has been, if I were to say my biggest accomplishment, it would be that I finally feel that I am in a good place in terms of my own healing. Of course, there's a lot more work to do, but at the same time, there is that acceptance that I am fine the way I am.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was a big thing, and it was based on that. So along the way, I had to overcome my own fears. I had to overcome my anger. I had to let go. I had to surrender. I had to learn to accept things the way they were. And those were the things that I was then able to have conversations with my patients, with
Right.
my clients. So, and that is where the connection happens. And so in this model of care, yes, when a patient comes to me with looking for integrative care, maybe initially they're looking for which vitamins and supplements can they take to reduce their side effect burden, for example, and then maybe how do we reduce the risk of recurrence if that is going to happen. But at the underlying that is, how do I work with the fear of this cancer coming back?
Mm.
Right? How do I let go? How do I accept if the cancer comes back, or in whatever shape or form it happens? How do I improve my lifestyle so that the cancer never comes back?
Or
And
the
then,
fear that the cancer is still there and won't go into remission or be healed.
correct,
I'm
right.
just saying, you haven't got to the next cancer.
Right, right,
Yeah.
exactly. Or not the next, like, if you're getting radiation therapy, it increases your chances of another cancer coming back. So, how do you navigate that entire world of one side effect from
Right.
one treatment leading to another, to a side effect that can lead to another cancer, or whatever it may lead, the
And
implication?
I have a nightmare story of a very dear friend who had childhood cancer and she went through radiation and that led to breast cancer in her mid 40s. That led to a heart issue later.
Right,
I mean, it was just like everybody was doing the best they could, but they weren't completely aware of how to
right,
dial in the radiation back in those days. And that
right,
caused both the breast cancer
right.
and the heart issue. But real quick, I think we're touching upon something. Let me go to the next question, but I want to do a little bit of a deep dive because honestly, I always have this thought, and this is a little bit my own philosophy for my own business, which is has different solutions. But at the end of the day, it's that for example, one aspect of my business is I had a mentor who really helped me at a critical time, and so now I help design mentorship programs for companies of all sizes, nonprofits, etc. And I went through that because it was my own journey. It was the why for me. And so I don't know, share as much as you would like, but it seems like a big why for you was the journey of healing you went through. So maybe you can paint that picture a little bit because you obviously are connecting, at a very emotional level, it seems like, with your patients. And I think that's because you went through your own tough journey. So could you share a little bit more about that?
So, if can you paraphrase the question?
Yeah. So in as much detail as you want to go over, help us understand the healing you had to do, the circumstances, the context, and then why is that the why for you with your patients? And because you are doing something very unique, and
Right.
I think
Well,
it's
definitely.
yeah,
My healing is my why that leads to me recognizing or helping it's not even me recognizing, it's helping patients recognize why they are doing what they're doing. And whether it is the right action or whether it is coming from a place of fear. So my early background was that I grew up in India, but my parents were kind of dominating kind of personalities. And my father was a very, very protective, almost to the point of being narcissistic kind of personality. So I was raised in a way that you are to be seen, you are to become all of this, whatever it may be, based on his expectations, but you are not to be heard. So the world must see you, but the world cannot hear you, at least as long as I'm in control. And so the guilt became a big part of my being, who I was. And then I was sent to a Catholic boarding school where guilt was added upon it, and the religion in which I grew up. So in India, most of the religions are more cultural religions. So, but Jainism is one of them, where the emphasis is a lot on nonviolence, and the way um, you work through that nonviolence is again through more penance, but similar to how it's done in Catholicism, the way I understand it. So it's all on you. So it becomes like you are never perfect and you will never be perfect enough, but you have to strive to continuously be perfect.
Mm.
So how do you, and as a child, that's, you accept that because you don't know anything else. But in my mid 30s, I was fortunate enough to come across insight meditation, which is a form of meditation that allows you to kind of go inward. And it's a technique that kind of helps you deconstruct your thought process without reacting to them. So as I practice that meditation, it's hard. I call it hardcore meditation because you start with 10 days of complete silence, and you're observing yourself through your thought process, through this technique that they teach you. But it's a deconstructive process that helps you understand, like, where is the thought coming from?
Mm.
Like, how is it, like, what is, it's like that itch and the scratch is the way I describe it. Like, you have the itch and you want to scratch it, and the more you scratch it, the more it's going to itch, and you keep going around in circles. And then it doesn't matter where that itch came from or what was the cause of the scratch, because if you hold back the scratching, the itch intensity decreases. Right? So, yes, you remove the offending agent eventually, but initially you have to start with holding back the scratching to help the itch, to alleviate the itch. And then when you're able to do that, then you can better see what was the offending agent. Otherwise, I'm scrambling for
Yeah. It
everything
reminds
around
it
me.
reminds me of the mental gyrations of what you focus on expands, which is how our brains work. And if you
Right.
focus on something negative, you're in that negative spiral because
Correct.
you keep focusing on it. It keeps expanding. So that's kind of what I'm hearing. But yeah,
Correct.
keep going. So yeah, what was this? So that's
So
amazing. You learned the whole
I learned
technique.
that.
And
I
yeah.
learned the technique. I learned to observe my mind. And prior to that, it was because of my upbringing, it was like bully me written all over over me. So I was being bullied quite a bit from my mother. My dad passed away early on, but from my mother, who took over his narcissistic kind of role to be a big influence in my life, to the point like telling me how to raise my children, how to behave with my in-laws, how to be with my husband, all of that. And I needed to break that cycle, especially for my children. That is what got me started. And
Right.
but then I couldn't, then I realized that I couldn't do it until I healed myself, and I broke that. And that's where the journey
Was
began.
that part of moving out of India into the United States to
No,
break
she
the
came
cycle?
with me. My mom moved to America with me as well.
Oh,
So
oh,
yeah,
wow.
our parents live with us until they die. So she's still with me. But I had to, the thing was, I realized at some point that unless I change myself, nothing else is going to change.
And
And I
have
had to,
you developed boundaries now?
oh, absolutely. And they're more seamless now because I'm more aware and I've become more confident. I've let go of fears, I've let go of anger. So things happen in like, again, the positive loop has started. So that
Right,
helps a
right,
lot, right? So I started that meditation, and that meditation process allowed me to understand what fear was, what anger was, what happiness is, how, why are happy people happy, right? Like, well, what is it that makes them happy? It's not just the circumstances around them. It's not like it's because they have more money or good health or whatever it is. Happy people are there even if they're sick, even if they're poor, it doesn't matter. So it allowed me to get more insight into that. And that is slowly what became a part of me as well. And a few realizations happened that yes, that being perfect is more like a guiding light, that I can always try to make myself become a bigger, better person, but perfect doesn't exist. So it's
Well,
not
can I share something? I don't know if I share this with you real quick, but not everybody watches every episode. So I had to reframe the perfection, perfect, and I'm like a word nerd, and most people think perfect means flawless, and that is one of the meanings. But if you
right,
go to etymology dictionary and you look at the actual Proto-Indo-European basic words, per means thoroughly or complete, and fect means to do. And
right,
all of a sudden I thought, well, wait a minute. So every day I'm trying to do my best. Every day I wake up and
perfect.
I'm thoroughly doing the best I can. And guess what? The next day I wake up and I'm thoroughly and I'm doing the best I can. And so when you have that level of awareness that you have and you're giving it your best, then that is what perfect is. You're doing
Correct,
perfectly by
correct.
the etymology meaning, which I think can, if people get into the intellectual word nerd side of it, it could give them some emotional relief from this idea of having to be flawless. Like, who's hot flawless? You know
Right,
what I mean?
right,
So anyway,
right.
I just thought I'd share because
Yes, absolutely. So that was the realization, and the way it came about was also interesting. That it came up in two ways. One is that I began to practice loving kindness, which is again accepting myself for who I am, and it's not an easy practice, and if you do it in the true sense of the word. But from that, I realized that in God's eyes, whoever that God may be. In God's eyes, I'm perfect.
I'm
I'm
just going to
not.
tease you because you said it's not easy and you said to practice loving kindness with yourself. But Madhavi, aren't you very lovable? And wouldn't that be easy? I'm just saying. Now, I'm not a coach for nothing. But anyway, keep going.
Right. So yes. So how do I get myself to do that? And so in God's eyes, I'm perfect, but I make myself not perfect in my own eyes. So I have to be perfect in my own. I am perfect. If I'm perfect in God's eyes, however I am, I'm perfect. Right.
Right.
So how do we learn to accept that? How do we learn to see that? How do we learn to understand it? Those were the conversations I was able to have with my
So
patients.
can I also blow your mind in a little bit of word nerd here? But I love I
Okay.
love verbs. I always tell people I have NDD, noun deficit disorder. I never forget a verb though.
Oh, really? Okay, that's awesome.
Somehow the nouns go on. But it's like if you look at the word understand, and you've used that a lot, and I totally understand where you're coming from, but I want to kind of throw this out as food for thought. Understanding is only one of your 4 levels.
Correct. In the intellectual part of it, correct?
Yeah.
That's what you mean.
And if you use the word apprehend, which most people use, like if you're about to get, like arrested,
Correct.
people don't really think of the word apprehend, but again, to grab onto. You
Right.
can grab onto something spiritually,
Mm-hmm.
physically, intellectually, and emotionally. And so
Correct.
I use the word apprehend on purpose in these kinds of situations so that I leave it open for people to get it sunk into them, to grab a hold of whatever it is they're grabbing hold of on these multiple levels. So I just thought I'd share that because it
Oh
seemed
yeah.
very appropriate.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Because it's that understanding is where the heart comes in, right? Like it's not just like through meditation, it's not just intellectualizing it. You're really experiencing that you are fine the way you are.
and I was having a big challenge earlier in my own journey where I had a mentor. He's like, let go, and when let go. And he would keep doing this. And I'm like, and then someone's like, change your focus.
Right.
Change your focus on the mental is the let go on the physical. And I was like, oh my God. Like, it was a little bit like mind blown. And so when you really think about it in all these different levels, this whole like I mean, I'm sure preaching to the choir here, because you get this more than my normal person that I'm interviewing, but like it just opens you up. Like you have no idea the doors you're opening up. So anyway, continue with
It's
your grief.
but like you said, it's like who says it, right? Or when does it hit your synapses? It has to be done at the right time or in the right way and to the right person, and not all of us are the same. So how do we figure out? I think it's an important part of that human connection is for us to understand where is it that you are coming from versus where is it someone else is coming from, and speaking their language to some extent the best we can.
Absolutely.
And that
So
is the work we need to do on our own so that I can then connect with you versus another person in a way that is non-threatening. But I had to let go of my insecurities in first, in order
yeah.
to not feel insecure by you telling me something.
Well, I'm struck by the fact that here we are having this interview where you are a physician assistant with 20 years worth of experience helping people through your voice, through coaching. Oh my goodness. Like that is the opposite of your childhood upbringing. And here you are having such a major impact. So thank you for sharing that context. I think that was really helpful for people. I'm going to turn to the next question. So, why is it important to incorporate caregivers such as yourself, into the cancer coaching process? Most people don't even think of cancer and coaching at the same time. So, tell us more about this.
I don't think we could go through life, whatever it brings with it, alone, right?
Mm,
No man is like, even the
an
island
island.
has its own ecosystem, so the island is not independent of itself. So it takes a village to raise us. It takes even a bigger village to be a part of healing, to restore health in whatever shape or form it is. And the simplest of physical health illnesses are easy to take care of to some extent on our own. But even then, if we really think we're never alone. So caregivers bring in a few things. They bring in a different perspective, like you mentioned. That is very important. Caregivers allow us to be who we are, and make allow us to be non-judgmental, allow us to accept it, allow us. They also teach us humility in the process. So, and all of that's part of this four quadrants, right? Like the spiritual part of it. If I don't have humility, no matter how much I do all the right things about good health, I may not get better. And we've seen that. We don't talk about it as much because it's a bitter pill to swallow, that I don't have humility. Like I can't tell someone
As
directly
the as the patient or
as
as
the
the doctor?
both, right?
I
Like
was going to say, I know a few doctors that were very like sure of themselves,
you
except for
not tell them.
my father-in-law was amazing. So he founded the Dermatological Society. He went to the Mayo Clinic. He was brilliant. And he said, because he was, dermatology, but there was, skin cancer and stuff. And he'd be like, there's a pretty, good percentage, I would say 40-50, where I just get out of the way and the patient heals
Right.
themselves.
Well,
Like the clinical side was like, I don't have all the answers, but he's there, and he was a gifted surgeon. Like if he would take a mole off, there'd never be any like issue, no scar.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but with patients too, because there are so many that I tell them, you have to learn to receive care.
Oh, that's true.
We are in such an independent minded culture that we don't want, like, it's either wrong to receive help. It hurts, like, my ego is, I'm not strong enough. There are so many number of reasons. And I have to tell patients, you know what, learn to receive that care, learn to receive that love, learn to see what the other person is offering. You don't have to do it alone. So
Yeah.
that is where caregivers bring in a very different perspective, a very different kind of care that the individual, I may think I know what my body needs, but do I really know what my heart needs? Do I know like how weak I am? And those are all part of that healing process. We have to know where we stand. And so that is what
We as clients or as patients.
all as individuals.
Yeah, as individual. Yeah, because some people have like a sixth sense about things, and in
Right.
those cases, it'd be smart for the, doctor to listen to that.
Oh,
I'll give you an example. I knew that my daughter was going to have the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck 3 times when she was
right.
born. Like I
You
said to
have to-
him, she's doing breakdancing. He's like, no, that's so rare. And then he's like, well, we're going to induce 2 weeks early. And I'm like, okay, if I wasn't so sure I was having this baby early, I'd say no. And I went into spontaneous labor the day that so there are these very unique,
It's a balance,
situations.
it's a
Yeah,
dance. There is no one way to do it, for
exactly.
sure.
But it's a dialogue. I
It
think
is a
that's what you're saying.
dialogue, and
Yeah,
we would do better as a society if we learned to listen more than we spoke, for sure.
exactly. Okay,
But
so let's
caregivers listened, right? Caregivers are listening to me. And like if I have cancer, then my caregiver is going to listen to me and then be able to offer the care in the way I need it.
Oh yeah. I
Right?
mean, my
That is
husband,
where,
he diagnosed his own blood clot
right,
while he was going through chemo. He's
right.
like, okay, this is not right. And we went in and the doctor listened and he was right, but that could have been, he could have gone right then and there. So I really love what you're saying, that, combination of each side, no matter the role, is listening. It's like a partnership.
And the cancer coaching process is where I am, like as a clinical coach, I am listening to where the patient is coming from. So as they're telling me their story, I am not only finding out about what vitamins and supplements they take, but what is maybe how do they exercise. So then maybe I'm giving them a way in which they would remain, like they would continue to exercise, or how are they eating, like what are the barriers that come up that they can't eat well, right?
Right.
Is it a food desert versus they don't like to cook versus they just like partying? There's so many different ways of looking at that. What is their social support system like, and where can that be intervened? How
Right.
does faith lead them or not lead them? There's so many parts to it. So that's where the cancer coaching journey, like having a coach by their side, can kind of help bring that into perspective, and
Yeah.
with kindness, so that is that gentle curiosity, right, that you're listening with, but you're not
Exactly.
judging them, you're just accepting them where they are and then helping them to go beyond that.
So let's go to this next question. I really want to get into this meditation. So, how do you integrate the mindfulness and the meditation into your practice?
Ooh, so everyone is different, right? Again, while talking to them, there are some people who really get um, their connection through the church, for example. Yet there are some people who will proudly say they're atheists. There are,
Mhm.
then and then most of them are somewhere in between, right? But all of us like to find stillness. All of us want to find that peace. We want to find that and harmony that exists, that we are craving for and yet we don't have. So the way I try to do that is first by listening to them, like where are they coming from? But then I start with prescribing anything from 5 minutes of actively doing nothing, incorporating that into their daily routine. And what I'm telling them is, sit on your porch and just watch the clouds, twiddle your thumbs, but just sit there and actively do nothing.
When you said prescribe, I'm like waiting for what the pharmaceutical was.
Correct. If I had a prescription pad, that's what I would do.
But I
And
do want to share this story with you because uh, I didn't realize, but I ended up with a little PTSD between bouts of cancer, because when I was in the machine the second time, and it had been like through 2-3 years, and they're zapping me with the radiation, it makes this, like bum bum bum, and all of a sudden I went, like my body reacted and my mind and my heart, and I went, okay, how am I going to do like 7 weeks of this Monday through Friday? And
right.
I'm in high tech, I don't know about meditation and all that, but I decided to just slow myself down, go to that stillness and say, I'm accepting that what this machine is doing is healing me. Like I ended up doing a self-hypnosis, which was an irony because
Right.
like 14, 15 years later, I bought a hypnosis business because I'd studied it and I found it to be so helpful. And I was like, okay, and my whole body relaxed. I was just like, boom, boom, boom. I'm like, that is going to serve for me. Like,
So how do you get people to accept whatever it is that they're going through? So
yeah,
that you have to know you're safe, right? Th- that is the acceptance part, that you kind of made yourself believe eventually.
I trusted that the
You
doctors knew what
trusted.
they were
That
doing.
trust is part of that faith, right? Like that I
Yeah.
have to, you shifted your focus. But
Yeah.
it was done with putting this and this together. You would not have been able to believe or trust that unless you truly knew that you were safe.
Right.
Right?
Actually, now in a tiny habits coach, I would call that a pearl habit. Pearl
Right.
habits are um, irritations that make something beautiful,
Correct.
like a pearl. And that irritation of the bum bum bum, but it was also, zapping the cancer, which was a
So
healing
you
process.
exercised it, right? You made
Yeah.
it like every day you reminded yourself that
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
was this was a good thing that you were going through. Yeah, and you would take the pain to get the gain, basically.
Yes. Yes.
But in a way that spoke to you. So how it's to make each individual aware of that. And the more the person does it versus me telling them that this is how you do it, that's how it's going to stick and work. Correct?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my job as a coach, as you know, as a coach, is to make those pro triggers into a good thing. And the best way to do that, the integration of mindfulness and meditation, is through the breath. The breath is not the involuntary breath that keeps us alive, and not the voluntary breath that comes with the fight, flight, freeze syndrome part of it, but that voluntary breath that comes from activating the vagus nerve. But basically, the peace breath, the parasympathetic system, is what I call it, and so it becomes a direct conduit between our inner and outer worlds, right? So if I am aware of my breath, then I know that I'm anxious. I know I'm afraid. But it has to be that reverse process where I become aware of the breath to understand that this emotion is happening in me versus the emotion kind of dictating how my breath works.
Mm, got it.
So like if I am anxious, if I know to go to my breath, then I will see I'm breathing very shallow from my chest. But the moment I become aware that I'm anxious and I start breathing from my belly, or I know to hyperventilate, or whatever it is that I've learned, then I can calm down my anxiety and take away a lot of that, at least that initial itch and the scratch again coming into play, but using the breath. And one of the ways I do it is start with breath awareness. So it's not about doing anything with the breath. Just put your hand on the belly, close your eyes, and watch your in breath, watch your out breath. And I guide for 2 to 3 minutes max. But patients then maybe realize that when you breathe out, the belly goes in, and when you breathe in, the belly goes out. Now, so many of us don't know that. My husband doesn't know that. He thinks that when you take a deep breath, it's like you're sucking all the air in. And that's not how you take a deep breath, right? You have to, it's like a balloon. So that's how I teach people, like just end the visit with 2 to 3 minutes of breath awareness.
Yeah, well, as a singer trained, you really get to learn about using your diaphragm.
Correct.
And it sounds like that's what you're describing. I'm not going to speak to it like you would be, but from a singer's point of view,
Right.
people
Exactly.
don't. They're doing chest breathing all the time. They're forgetting to use your diaphragm.
Right. And you tell
Unless you're
someone to take a deep breath and they go,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
and it's
Oh,
it's
this
like
is.
they don't know how to move, not they don't know how to not move their shoulders to take a deep breath.
I know. Anyway, we could keep going on, but I really want to wrap up with this some success stories. So maybe you can just share one or two, we'll see how fast they go, but one or two success stories from your coaching practice. Of course, you'll keep everybody's name, confidential, but I really would love to, and the audience listening to understand the impact of this holistic approach. It's so powerful.
Sure. So I had a late 20, early 30-year-old kid is whom I'm going to call because he's as my children. But he came to me with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And he, of course, was distraught, but he did have, in retrospect, for me to be able to put things into perspective, he did have a hard childhood. He was uprooted when he was 8. He was sent to another country by his father. He stayed there for a few years, then was uprooted again and sent with his mom and his sister to America. And it was just like there was no rhyme or reason in his little brain as to why all this was happening. So that was part of his life story. Now, he came to me with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and to kind of help him with the side effects, basically, he came to integrative medicine, like which vitamins and supplements do I take? How do I reduce the risk of recurrence through the traditional integrative complementary modalities? But as we got talking, I got to find out about his life story, and I found out that he did like stillness and he did like meditation kind of thing, but he did not know how to incorporate it as a part of his journey. So I told him to start with something as simple as actively doing nothing for 5 minutes, increasing it to 10, 15 minutes, and kind of taking it from there. Of course, we added other things, how to eat well, to remove sadly, in the oncology space, we say, especially in the traditional space, we are taught that if you have cancer, you can eat whatever you want, right? And so drink all the Ensure you want, eat all the sugar you want, because who knows whether you'll see tomorrow or not, basically. But we are going to throw everything and the kitchen sink at your cancer so that you don't die. So it's a lot of these conflicting messages that people get, right? So we did clean up his diet. I did try to get him to exercise more regularly. I did try to get him to lean on his girlfriend who was there with him, and her family was there to support him as well, to get to lean in on them to help him. He got through it fine. I lost track of him. A couple of years later, he came back to me and he said, "Now I want to get into meditation."
Oh, that's so awesome.
And so he did. And now at 5, 7 years later, I lost track of time. He's an ED. And he is in such a good place and the fear of the cancer coming back, which is more important, that the fear of the cancer coming back is now more on the back burner. It's shifting, and he's just living his life trying to be the good person, the bigger person, the better
What do you
person.
mean? What do you mean he's ED?
NED, which is no evidence of disease.
Oh, sorry, us lay
Yeah.
people. That's fantastic.
Yes,
Wow.
but he's living his life more from a point of becoming a good person, living his life in a way that serves his purpose, and to continue to find ways that brings about that stillness and harmony within him, so
Right.
that he doesn't have to live in fear.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing.
Yes.
So I'll say one more thing and then we're gonna wrap up. This has been absolutely amazing, Madhavi. I found out after I had the symptoms that 50% of women who went through a lumpectomy and radiation got clinically depressed within 2 years. Mm-hmm. And I was also living in Seattle, where you get seasonal affective disorder, because there's now I'm in Florida. I had 25 years of no sun. But anyway, and so it kind of made sense. But I ended up taking a leave of absence, and I was the sole breadwinner. My husband didn't have cancer at that time. And he's a little bit risky because what's going to happen? But I did something clinically beautiful that I had no idea was clinically right. And I gave myself an assignment the first day to do nothing except for make the decision to do nothing, which was me checking the box. Yeah, ended up helping a friend out that day. So I was actually doing something, but it was more like selfless giving. She was getting her wrist surgery. She goes, well, what are you going to do today? And I'm like, well, today's the day that I decide to do nothing. And so I'm done.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
And it was just like what you said. And I made a little ritual out of it. At that time, it was fall, and I would have tuna fish sandwich with green onions and, Diet Dr. Pepper on my back, porch, where they would have the balloons, in the fall, big balloons would go up, the hot air balloons. And it was just this ritual of relaxing. And I was like, when is the last time I did that? And so isn't that funny how this is like what you're prescribing?
We have to, but those who find it hard to do, for example, I noticed that they have a hard time not liking acupuncture, a difficult time liking acupuncture. Now,
Oh,
who
yeah.
doesn't love acupuncture? But some people just cannot, because that means lying still or sitting still while the needles are in you, though they don't hurt. But being still for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, up to an hour, and to observe that chi flowing through your body.
And
But
can you
those,
imagine no phone for 45 minutes?
right, and to observe and to become so uncomfortable in your body. But that is where then, because acupuncture is an amazing modality to help reduce the side effects of cancer, reduce the risk of cancer, to good health generally, whether you have any disease or not. So it's those, or even hypnosis, right? Like
Yeah.
some of us cannot be hypnotized, me included. And there is something that's still agitating within my head space, in my mind space, that I cannot kind of surrender into somebody else, whoever that person thing is, controlling the circumstances.
I don't know if you had the right hypnosis or hypnotherapist,
Probably, I
because
quite
it's not like, a stage hypnosis where we make you cluck like a chicken,
no.
and
Oh
if
yeah,
anyone falls asleep in the chair, then you're doing it wrong. Because
correct.
it's this, you'll get this. You're highly physically relaxed because you
Correct.
do the deepening of, relax every muscle, but you're highly focused on listening. And then depending on the different techniques, you can go like my hypnosis teacher taught me one that was like reverse metaphor. And it's basically you bypass the logical mind because you're so relaxed. We're in hypnosis when we drive and don't remember how we got home. It's just our subconscious. We're
But
connecting.
that session of hypnosis, to surrender, to go into that high state of high relaxation, means I have to surrender. It means that I have to know that I'm safe. It's not the logical mind. The body has to know it,
I
right?
get it. No, I
And
get it.
it's so hard to do that when you've lived in a world that is so like it. We work on fear, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's so funny because, like, I'll use this word. Whenever I get triggered by something, that's the word I am using when I get emotionally like, like I don't like that. It's really an invitation for me to go deeper in my own psyche to
Correct.
figure out why that is triggering me, because it's no one else. I mean, I suppose if
Correct.
someone hauled out and socked me in the face, that would be a trigger. But in
Right.
this case, nonviolent, and so, perhaps, we get to learn all the time about
Right.
things. And isn't that interesting? Yeah.
It is. It is.
Um,
But
yeah.
cancer
So
is a good way. It was sadly but beautifully, cancer is a good way to wake up versus it being a death sentence. So it can teach us, like, what is it that made, how did I'm here? What were the things that were not serving me to be here, to get this
yeah,
cancer? What did
this
I
is
do?
how I translate what you're saying, because I got really cynical when my husband's like, well, we're going to all be stronger as a family. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to be dead. Like
Right.
I was
Right.
in the I
Absolutely.
was in the really cynical protect
Right.
myself mode. But I later thought to myself, and my spirituality expanded in ways that I don't have to explain to everybody on the audience, but we'll just say that I have a very open mind to what happens to the soul after our physical body dies. And I never had those thoughts, before I went through this whole process. And at the end of the day, I do think everybody's soul, even my late husband's, is stronger. And I know I'm stronger. my kids are stronger. Now, it took us a lot of time because grief is a journey all and of its
Oh,
own,
absolutely.
and in many cases is wrapped up in the cancer as you're going through it, the grief, pre-grief, for what might happen to you. But it's, at any like low point, you have it's like a little bit chaos, but within chaos, you have an unexpected growth can happen. I don't know another way of explaining it. And so I do hear what you're saying. Like there's an opportunity to open the door to learning about yourself in a really deeper way. I'll wrap up with this one little metaphor that I use, and that is when people have gone through the school of hard knocks, which is my kind of, I don't know if it's a cute way, but a cute way of saying really tough times, because, cancer 3 times for me, my husband passed away. It's like, imagine that my character was this chunk of wood. And as I was growing older, I was carving with every situation that happened to me, like a cup out of that wood. And the harder the school of hard knocks, the deeper that cup is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the cup of pain. But then you get the joy in equal measure, because now you can savor those joyful moments because you know how meaningful they are.
Right.
And so that's, to me, like the metaphor of, you have to kind of embrace, at least I would suggest everybody embrace the good, the bad, the ugly, because it's that, yin yang, that we also have the meaning, the meaning in those beautiful moments whenever those happen.
And if the cup is half empty, it is also half full. So
exactly. And it's depth of half fullness.
right.
So
Yeah.
if for people who want to reach Madhavi, you can reach her. Here's her email and here's her website. And she's, definitely an amazing partner for anyone who is going through either the caregiving of someone else who has cancer or that cancer, patient or client themselves. So thank you so much, Madhavi, for your time and for the amazing work that you're doing to help others. I just so appreciate getting to know your story and all the great work you're doing.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor, and it was definitely a pleasure being here, having the conversation with you.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we're going to wrap up with my little video. Thank you, everybody.